It's the show Agent Orange / Adolf Twitler would love to shut down.
So here's the story, folks. I am the least black person that you've ever seen in your entire life. In fact, we did very well relative to racist people.
It's the no bullshit zone.
It's called fake news.
It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show.
I know who you are. Just wait.
On the Pacifica Radio Network.
It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network. Welcome to it. Boy, do we have a lot to cover today, including Donald Trump's rally against education, Chris McDonald's rally against Satan. We've also got, well, everything else in between. Before we get to all of that, some brief introductions are in line. Hi, welcome to my show. I'm your host, critical thinker, problem solver, guy just left of normal insane. My name is Shaggy Jenkins, and you can find me at my website, shaggyjenkins.com, or wherever fine social media is served at Shaggy Live. Joining me from the middle of the polar vortex where, oh God, did he find himself into some trouble today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our far, I guess we can say, northern polar correspondent from FYI Nation and host of Some Say, it's Thomas Reynolds.
Yes, indeed, and I'm glad to be here and be alive from all the craziness.
Yeah, I can imagine so, Thomas. Here's the thing. If you were somebody driving around today, because this is something that was very interesting that came out of the state of Hawaii. You know that for the first time in ever, the mountains right above this studio, the Haleakala Mountains, are snow-capped from peak to what used to be Green Peak.
I did not know that. That's amazing to me.
Yeah. Well, this is the real amazing part of it. A lot of people are you know, kind of going around here in Maui like, oh, what happened to global warming? Why isn't there more global warming? Look at this. And then one of our local state representatives kind of put up on social media, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, when more moisture is dumped into the air as a change of climate, we get more snow here in Hawaii, and those record-setting 191 mile per hour winds, that is in fact global warming. Is it weird that people keep calling climate change global warming and thinking that it's like some sort of heater we turn on and off?
Well, yeah, it is, because that's the great lie that conservatives like Rush Limbaugh and Donald Trump and the Orange Menace have sold us, right? That global warming is just some sham made up, I guess, by the Chinese, and we don't really have to worry about it because fossil fuels.
Oh, yeah, fossil fuels. It almost sounds like these guys could use an education, doesn't it?
Absolutely it does, and I'd love to school them every once in a while.
Well, this is where our first story comes in, because if you're looking to school people, don't look to school Donald Trump Jr. Did you hear his recent comment?
No, I didn't, but I'd love you to fill me in a little bit here.
Oh, you're going to love this. So Donald Trump Jr. recently at his father's rally, you know, that one that was in El Paso that was better attended by the Beto O'Rourke people than it was by the Donald Trump people, no matter what they say?
Why do you got to spread that fake news, Shaggy?
Oh,
you know that's true.
Fake news. Here we go again. Thomas. Okay, but here's the thing. You're going to love this. Donald Trump Jr. jumped in front of this rally and started screaming about public education, of all things, Thomas. And this is the thing that he said. You know what I love? I love seeing some young conservatives because I know it's not easy. And then he goes on to say, keep up that fight. Bring it to your schools. You don't have to be indoctrinated by these loser teachers that are trying to sell you on socialism from birth. Thomas, loser teachers.
Yeah, which is funny. One of the things that should be praised is having a job as a teacher, because you actually do more work than most people and end up being more of a babysitter than an actual teacher. So maybe he should STFU about that.
Oh, well, yeah, this is the thing, though. As much as we talk about the Trump administration being anti-science, this is like very vocal anti-education now. Whoa. Am I?
Not really.
What? Go
Go
it.
ahead. Sorry.
No. I'm just kind of like panicky thinking that we're all headed for a Pink Floyd The Wall kind of existence here with we don't need no education.
Well, here's the thing, though. I got to remind you, this is a telegraph thing from the Trump, before Trump. Remember, he's the guy who said, I love the poorly educated, because he was doing so well with them in the polls. And he really does. They do. They don't want people educated. They don't want people understanding the issues. They don't want people understanding climate change. They don't want people understanding socialism and what democratic socialism is. That, God forbid, they have an inkling of who Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez really is and what she's all about, because then you have real issues with chipping away at the lies and the narratives that the conservatives tell on a regular basis. So what they do is they go in a totally ram your throat kind of way to obfuscate the facts and go a little bit crazy, because that's what they do best. They got to lie and they got to shame.
Okay. So this is the thing about this latest kind of lie, because Twitter had a field day with Donald Trump Jr. when it came to this. They were just dying for him to say something as dumb as this, because over and over and over again on social media, they said, well, if we don't need those loser teachers, please explain your father's grammar. Explain your grammar. Explain language. Just, Donald Trump Jr., why are you? I mean, that seemed to be what Twitter was taking him to task for. And this is the thing I got to ask you. What was your reactions when you have this GOP kind of, I guess you can say, spokesperson for the Trump agenda going out in front of crowds and saying, okay, we've already condemned the media. We've already condemned science. Now we're condemning general education, which includes civics.
Well, they want people dumbed down, and it goes to the simple fact: the stupider you are, the dumber you are, the better off you'll be in the Republican Party, because you're in the mental midget mentality that you got going on. You're not thinking things thoroughly through. You're going off on anger and that type of way. So you'll believe anything. You'll believe Donald Trump will build a wall. And seriously, we had JFK who went to strive for getting us to the moon. And what is this president striving for us to have? A wall that endangers species more than they already are endangered, right? And goes through church land that has been there for hundreds of years, and takes away other people's lands that they have had for generations. And they're not talking about that because they want them dumb. They don't want to talk about the real issues of how bad the wall is, but we need to build that stupid wall, right?
Yeah, and this is kind of the other thing that I noticed about his whole statement, and clue me in here if I have somehow missed a memo, or the 1970s and 1980s were a more genteel time in America, because he said that teachers indoctrinate from birth, Thomas, from birth.
I'm not quite sure how they do that, but considering that, preschool and kindergarten and things like that are mostly paid for, I know that you could pay for a preschool education and things like of that for daycare and everything else, and that's capitalism right there. So I'm not quite sure how that works.
Me neither, but when we talk about economies, let's just go ahead and say that the United States economy does suffer right now from a little bit of an educational bias. Now, on this show, from time to time, I keep mentioning what's called the skills skills gap labor-based jobs, okay? These are the skills gap, and these are in labor-based jobs, I should say. The reason I bring those up is because those jobs in the United States usually and typically used to benefit from an education system that not only did academics, but also did vocational. I, for instance, come from a vocational trained school where, yeah, I'm going to admit it, maybe I'm not doing as much auto mechanics as I was doing in those old days, but by God, I learned a couple of different trades. The thing is Donald Trump is saying, or Donald Trump Jr. in this case is saying, look, you are, if you go to school, being lied to. So what does this mean? That conservative students are going to start standing up in class and going, I call fake education on this lesson?
I'm not quite sure it'll be that crazy, but they want people to be indoctrinated in their truth. They want people to be dealing with their way of thinking. And so what they're going to do is demean any other way. They're going to demean education. They're going to demean people who preach on climate change. They're going to demean people who believe in democratic socialism because it's the easy way out. It's hard to argue against a negative. So what they're going to do is they're going to take out the worst thing and say, defend it. How can you be such a loser? You and your fancy education and you and your elitism, right? As if that is a bad thing, because who is the most elite person? Somebody who's getting a golden parachute because they did all this great capitalistic things. And how did they get to do it? Through an education. So tell me how that capitalist who made a golden parachute happen end up being this stupid person. They're not, because they were educated and there was no indoctrination. It's just another falsehood from the Trump folks.
Yeah, this is the thing, because when we're talking about falsehoods here, a lot of the falsehoods of Donald Trump, including those ones around executive power, around what exactly constitutes a national emergency. Oh, and by the way, what is legality when it comes to foreign government's involvement in the United States election and his personal campaign. A basic, I would say, middle school civics and U.S. history lesson would kind of negate everything that the president is saying now. So if we have an administration that we know is empowered, as you have mentioned earlier, on the backs of the poorly educated, the elitism that they're now trying to fight, the swamp that they're trying to drain, is now the mental capacity of the United States?
Well, yeah, because it's their MO, right? They need gullible people to believe their BS. If not, they can't sell it. There are people who still believe that Trump is going to build this wall, and let's say that we don't have a victory for the Trumps, but he's going to declare it as a victory anyway, and you only get 55 miles worth of wall. Well, I'm building it. See, everybody? Here's my victory. This is where I plant a flag. And that's how they get away with it, because the stupider they have as a base, the further they can go with their base.
Yeah, and I mean, as long as we're talking about basics, okay? Because, like you said, you're taking it down to how do they throw to the base? How do they throw to the base? Let's try to throw to the most base things that involve teachers and public education. Shall we, Thomas?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so let's start off with one of the major themes in people's reply to Donald Trump Jr. was, call us losers? We have to, despite our pay and despite how well-funded we're supposed to be, buy our own supplies for education. So really, when we're talking about who loses in this scenario, I mean, I hate to say that something that he said is right, he just had the context wrong. Yes, in the public education system, a lot of times teachers are the losers, aren't they?
No, you're absolutely right, but we never want to talk about that in much detail, except as a passerby. It's one of these things where we don't realize that we should be paying teachers as well as we do that stockbroker. We should be paying teachers as well as we should that construction worker, because they are molding those people for the jobs that they have. Well, I've never understood, and somebody needs to, who's a conservative and believes that teachers are losers, I've never understood why they are, when if it weren't for a teacher, they wouldn't have gotten to where they are in the first place. How did they do that? Was it their own bootstraps? Who helped provide the bootstraps? It was the teacher in the first place. You only have to start from there to know where you're going, and it was that person's ingenuity and hard work that helped them get along. But it was always the teacher first, and we need to give teachers credit, and they are losers in the saddest form because they're not given the credit they're due, except when we're defending them from the likes of Donald Trump Jr.
Yeah, I mean, in my book, I would like to say, hey, all United States teachers are winners, but time and time again, you've got teachers trying to apply for food assistance, trying to scrounge up things like GoFundMe campaigns to get supplies for the next coming school year. And this is one of the saddest facts. A lot of these teachers in, let's call them marginalized communities, a lot of these teachers like to contribute to the students that they know are underprivileged. So despite not having any financial means to do it, they go above and beyond sometime, Thomas, just to provide for their more impoverished students so that everybody in their class has an equal opportunity for education. Now,
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, and that's why they are winners, and that's why I hold them in such high esteem, because they're doing the best they can in the worst situation, and we put them in that situation, and they should receive the best that we can give them, and they don't, and it's really sad.
Well, that's just it. Let's talk about some other things that are sad, because a basic education would tell you that at no point in any part of their charter have the Democrats made a deal with Satan himself. Am I correct on that?
Well, I don't know. That Ocasio-Cortez, something in her eye.
Well, yeah. That's what Chris McDonald says. Look, according to him on his Sunday program over the weekend, and I wanted to bring this one up with you because you're the guy that loves to do the kind of nutty right-wing stories with me. Please explain to me, Thomas, what is exactly the link between the notorious AOC and the BIG Satan himself?
Well, I think there is none, but Chris McDonald thinks there is, and according to him, God is a God of freedom. He's not a God of communistic and socialism ideology. And when you have Bernie Sanders and these other politicians out there espousing how great these things are, folks, I'm not trying to discourage them personally, but the theology, the ideology, it's of Satan. So he's equating Bernie and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and their ideology to Satan, which is just ridiculous because it's not spiritual. It's not anything to do with that. It's specifically an ideology. If anything, I can point, if we're going to go that route, right, I can point to all the evils of capitalism and say, how does capitalism not equate to Satan? But I'm not going to go down that road. But this goes back to Donald Trump Jr., right? They want to continuously harass and bash because they have no actual facts to back their stuff up. Because if they did, they would bring them to the table. They have to use this bad mojo line to try and get away with what they're trying to sell. And it's old and tiresome, but they seem to think that it still works. And I guess it's not for their base. Old and tiresome as much as it might be for me.
This is the thing that kind of gets me about, because I love exploring kind of big themes States, I'm kind of a macro type of view person. Very Machiavellian, as it were, when I try to observe the machinations of certain things. This is something that I'm noticing very, very subtly. Okay, let me back that up. Very bluntly is happening to a certain sect of the Republican Party. People on the right, and we've seen it in just these two stories, people on the right have started to attack science, education, free and open media, anyone that opposes their leaders, and any other system or system of thought of government that opposes their let's get her done and build walls and run the country like a machine. Now, Thomas, I'm sorry I'm kind of rubbing my head here because it gives me a headache thinking about this stuff, because in the big picture of things, would we say that within the Republican Party, right now there exists a far-right, kind of dark age-esque wanting faction of their party?
No, you're absolutely right, and I'll take it one step further. It's authoritarianism and totalitarianism. It's a way of ruling over you and making everybody else who's not agreeable to your opinion the underclass. And that is the way they prop up their base, because their base needs to constantly be told how special they are and how their mommy loves them and daddy loves them, and they can't handle any other way. Remember, I used to be a conservative. You need to be propping conservatives up to be able to stay on that moral high ground and high horse on a regular basis, because there is no there. There really isn't. Now, it took me a lot of time and education to get to where I am in my liberal viewpoints. But once I realized how it was a house of cards and there was nothing there except for the real elites, then I realized it's not anything I wanted to be a part of anymore.
Yeah, because it seems to be the earmarkings of an almost dare I say, autocratic or oligarchic system of government, when only the top tier % are wanting access to education. And I bring this up because let's not forget that the Secretary of Education famously comes from the for-profit college system in the United States, which was not that great of an education system, and boy, did they profit off of people. That's the kind of education they want people like middle class and impoverished people to have access to. They're the Ivy League schools, the 4-year colleges, exponentially the tuition has grown per decade, so much so that only the super rich or those willing to go into debt for decades can afford. So, Thomas, in this whole kind of remaking of America that Donald Trump is trying, this Make America Great Again scheme, is education on the radar of things that they don't want everybody to have access to, and they're willing to say, if you want to think differently than us, well, you're a product of Satan.
Absolutely. In fact, what they want to do is they want to tear it down while they're tearing you down. The best thing they could do is to continue on this track. And they want the elite to do it because they don't want people of color and minorities and groups that are quote-unquote special interests to be getting an education, because then they might get a leg up and actually achieve things. They do not want progress. They're anti-progress. They want to keep things the way they are because they have the power and the power structure. And they don't care that it's smaller than anything else. That's how they like it. They don't want the little guy to really get up and be able to have a leg up and go further, because that destroys their power base, that hurts them, and they're more than happy to continue this trail on a regular basis. They just don't care, because what's theirs is theirs, and they're going to get it no matter what.
Yeah, because in this story of Chris McDonald going after the notorious AOC, because let's just face it, anybody out of Brooklyn's got to have a hip-hop name, man. But the notorious AOC, she is kind of one of the favorite targets of people on the right lately, isn't she?
Absolutely. They can't handle her because she actually knows the issues. And that frightens to death conservatives because, again, with this guy and with Trump Jr., they never actually talk about the issues. Notice how they continually just gloss over the actual issues and go to name-calling and degradation, and they don't bother with any actual facts about how great capitalism is and how great, let's say, the private self-funded education system is in America. They never do that. They talk about charter schools maybe, and they say, you're going to be helped in that way, when most of the time it's not a thing.
Yeah, because here we've got it that they're trying to lock away all of the knowledge and keep it for themselves, but when we give it to them, they don't do that much with it, do they?
No, they don't, because it goes back to their MO, right? They don't want to because they want to keep what's theirs, and they want to keep everybody else on the sidelines. And that's how they maintain power, and that's how they get the Senate full of Republican senators, and how they get all these activist Republican judges, and they didn't see any of Obama's judges. What was it, 44 judges in one day that McConnell got through and couldn't get the Supreme Court justice through because I died and Obama shouldn't have been given that privilege?
Right. Well, we've got to take a quick break. When we get back, we've got more news to cover. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything. All I did was dance. I was being scouted for a scholarship. I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor. If making my detox public is gonna help somebody, I'm all for it. Is there any medicine that I can have right now? I'm cold sweating really bad. I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
This is the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network.
It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network. Welcome back to it. Hey, if you've missed any part of the show, we are available darn near anywhere streaming audio is served. You can check us out on Stitcher, Spotify. There's tons of them. So just go look for us. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show, and you can catch like earlier episodes in this all over the place. But for all the details that you need to know about me, the show, the latest episodes, go to shaggyjenkins.com or follow me on social media at Shaggy Live. Joining me from the middle of the polar vortex where he just fought off a couple of bears and walked 15 miles both ways uphill home in the snow. It is from FYI Nation and host of Some Say, Thomas Reynolds.
I'm feeling it, too.
Yeah, I know, right? There is one thing about being in the cold, and I'm saying that, of course, from the tropical isle of Hawaii, where this show is based. It's just something about being in the cold that makes you go, nah.
That is very true, especially today.
Well, I want to dive into kind of one of those stories that makes you go, nah. Not nah, but nah. Thomas, tell us about the time that Obama-damus, or, Nostradamus with Obama there, I tried, and I probably failed on that amalgamation, but I went for it. Obama, the Nostradamus president of past, tell us about the time that he kind of predicted that all of that stuff that we were talking about in the first segment of the show would come back to really bite us in the, well, you know where.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about it. It's not just Obama who did it. It was also Hillary Clinton when she predicted and said basically the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. You better watch your junk, and nobody really paid a great attention. And now we have Obama doing it, and it's an amazing story from Think Progress, where nearly 4 years ago, deeply conflicted young senator rose to announce his opposition to future Justice John Roberts' confirmation at the Supreme Court. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind Justice Roberts is qualified to sit on the highest court in the land, the senator conceded. Moreover, he seems to have the comportment and the temperament that makes him a good judge. Resume and temperament, however, were not enough in the toughest cases. Adherence to precedent and rules of construction and interpretation will only get you through the 25th mile of the marathon. Now, this is important because this was Barack Obama, and he's spent much of his presidency getting dragged by Republicans who likened Obama's call for judicial empathy to promise to burn the Constitution and replace it with Das Kapital. He really did try. And he knew what was going on beforehand and how it would affect us. And what we have to keep in mind is this is just like Hillary. Hillary tried and warned us during the debates about what was happening with the Russians and the Russian interference. And this goes back to what we were talking about, right, Shaggy? We have Democrats who talk on the issues, and then you have the Republicans who just blow smoke up your hoo-ha. And that's the sad truth of it, is where we're at.
Yeah, because this is one of the things that kind of gets me about this little headline. Okay, a while back, on this very show, we talked about certain themes at the beginning of the Trump administration that were kind of dangerous. And one of the things that we said was a little weird was how many people in the left side of the political aisle were making predictions that, I hate to say it, but 2.5 years later have kind of came true. But when it comes to the Supreme Court, this is what Mitch McConnell has always wanted. He wanted a conservative stacked Supreme Court because that is a lifetime appointment. Now, I tried looking up ways to get like a judge defrocked, and it took me to some weird fetish websites that I really don't want to repeat on the air, Thomas.
Sorry.
Yeah, always surf the internet, kids, with the safe filter on when looking for certain judicial headlines. Perversions aside, though, this is kind of a perversion of law that we talk about here, because the Supreme Court is supposed to be kind of the biggest, most unbiased, most highest level of constitutional justice type thinking. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And the Republicans, and not just Mitch McConnell, have done everything they tried to do to stack the decks with these types of judges.
Yeah, and when we talk about stacking the deck, you know, it goes deeper than the Supreme Court. Let's not forget that Jeff Sessions, all the way out to his resignation, was stacking the federal judiciary with conservative judges. Mitch McConnell, during the government shutdown, actually was going behind everybody's back and approving more and more judges in the federal circuit of the conservative mindset that were just like him, that are scarily nationalistic. Okay, that's the only way we can describe their policies right now. But then this warning from the past comes up and says, oh, by the way, we kind of warned you that this was going to happen, but after the Republicans took both the House and the Senate, there was very little that we could do, wasn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I get so fed up with people who tell me that there's no difference between the Republicans and the Democratic Party. I'm so tired of that false meme, right? It's sickening because all you have to do is look at the judges Republicans give us and looking at the judges that the Democratic Party gives us. Now, can they be more corporate on the corporate side? Absolutely. But they're harsh and they are horrible when it comes to the Republican side, and there's no empathy there. And one of the things Barack Obama was trying to get was empathetic judges. Now, did you agree with everything they wanted to do? Probably not. But when do we ever get that in politics, where you find somebody perfect, except maybe Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders?
Oh, I see. The two people that are of Satan. Oh, Chris McDonald right now hears his ears burning. Or either that or he hears the call of Cthulhu. We don't know how his brain works sometimes. Look, this is the thing, though. Thomas, how are we supposed to, here's a challenge for you, make sense of all of this?
Get good Democratic people in the Democratic Party, and if they're not good, primary them. It's really, you're not going to do it with the Green Party, you're not going to do it with the Libertarian Party. Sorry, it's just not going to happen. You have to get good Democratic people in the Democratic Party, and if they're not good, primary them. It's really that simple.
Yeah, but this is the thing, too, is when we talk about all of this judicial nightmare that we've been led down into this path to, it's kind of one of those hindsight is 2020 sort of things. So here we are in the landscape of the judicial branch of the United States being skewed hard conservative for the next 3 decades. I kind of remember this famous headline that was going around during the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, where this one woman was breaking down in the protest and said, he could last 30 years. I can't. And that's kind of the thing that people don't realize, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly the thing people don't realize. And they also don't realize that we have a chance in 2020 to change the deck and make Mitch McConnell minority leader. There are a lot of people who are coming up in the Senate that we might be able to change if we give a damn and do it and work hard on it and just ignore the meme of the Democrats and the Republicans are the same, because the Democratic Party, when it comes to judges, is not. We've been told this. And, you know, if we're going to get good judges, it goes back to the other stories we've done. We need education and good teachers. And the only way we're going to get them is with good Democratic candidates and politicians in office, and the ones that aren't, we can get rid of them. It's really that easy. You just go and vote.
Yeah, you would think it would be that easy. It's almost like somebody should teach people that somewhere. I'm at a loss here.
Well, that's why I'm glad to do the show and talk about this today, because we do get to teach people this, because you only have to look at the Republican Party and see how into themselves and be as crazy that they really are when it comes to just the smallest of things, right? And the scariest of things is judges. And we have people who continually warn us. And sure, does Chuck Schumer probably suck as a majority leader? Absolutely. But is he better than Mitch McConnell? Absolutely. And if you want somebody better than Mitch McConnell, you're going to have to take a little bit of bad to get a little bit of good in the long run.
Yeah. But the little bit of bad and the little bit of good in this story seems to be that, look, the little bit of bad is, oh my God, we were warned. The little bit of good is, well, since we were warned, that means that all this is cyclic. However, how long is it going to take for the damage, let's just go ahead and call it that, the damage done to the judiciary in the last 2 years, how many decades do you think that's going to take for us to correct?
Well, my kid will probably be in her 50s. I'm just saying. Maybe if we fix things with climate change, that has to be caveated in there. But I'm hoping that people will wise up and we can start fixing things now. Can we get rid of the judges? No. But can we stop this from being a thing? Yes. And the argument has to be is the Democratic Party is not the same as the Republican Party. And the other argument is, tell me the person in the Green Party, if you're really progressive, that's in the Senate who's going to fix this. Tell me the majority in the Green Party. Explain to me the majority in the Green Party in the House who's going to fix this. Oh, wait. Let me remind everybody, there's not one person who is a Green Party person, and I'm not denigrating the Green Party. I'm just pointing out a fact here. There's not one person from that party in the House or the Senate today. So maybe we should find people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and get them in office and convince good Green people to run as Democratic Party and change the party from within.
Well, that's just it. A lot of people, when they think of Democrats, they don't really think of the implications of what the Democrat Party usually does to the judiciary. They don't think of, and I'm going to just throw this out there as a big wide net. Thomas, am I wrong in assuming that when we go to the polls every couple of years, we never, ever, ever think about who is appointing federal judges, do we?
No, we don't, because it was the last thing on our list because the polls tell us so. And it should be the first thing on our list because you have Republicans being sneaky and using this as a wedge issue, and all you have to do is look at the abortion issue and what they're talking about on Fox News about New York and Virginia and everything else, when really they're not. These judges are probably not going to do anything with abortion because then they have no issue. What they're going to do is the worst damage to the economy and everything else when it comes to getting their own and doing like everything else that ties into every other story we've done today, where Republicans get to keep theirs and keep going with theirs and not sharing with anybody else.
Well, they do seem not to like to share a whole lot, don't they?
Yeah, apparently they didn't get taught that in school, and that's a preschool lesson.
Yeah, it kind of is. Now, this is kind of one of the things. I don't know. Yeah, I kind of do want to jump into this story here because, look, we could talk about weirdos in the GOP and how they've impacted the judiciary forever. But as long as we're going to talk about weirdo GOP stuff, Thomas, I have got to throw out this one little suggestion from Senator Ted Cruz. Iron Ted, we call him ever since he grew the beard because obviously he's lumberjacking something, right?
Yeah, I'll keep my mouth shut on that.
Yeah. Kids, there is a different meaning for lumberjacking, by the way. Don't look it up. Now, here's the thing. When we talk about Ted Cruz, his latest kind of a harebrained scheme is this is wonderful. This is absolutely hilarious, okay? Donald Trump, a long time ago, promised all of his base that he was going to make Mexico pay for the wall, right? Mexico, by and large, said, "Okay," and then just basically promptly proceeded not to do anything of the sorts of paying for the wall. Ted Cruz has a way of pulling this one from the grave, Thomas. And this is his suggestion. You know recently convicted drug lord El Chapo?
Yes, I do. He's a really great friend of mine. He's a good hole digger, too.
Okay. Yeah, he's basically, this is the funny thing. Ted Cruz, okay, well, I don't want to spoil it just yet. Let's just get to the main headline. Then I'll spoil the back of the story. Okay, here we go. The main headline is El Chapo has been found guilty of everything, okay? Like, everything. I think they got him for giving a puppy a dirty look. They got him on everything, okay? With that said, he's going to jail for a long time, and being one of those big, rich drug lords, happens to have a huge stash of cash maybe. Somewhere, possibly. And Ted Cruz says, let's make El Chapo pay for the wall. Thomas, thoughts?
Stupidest idea I've ever heard. In fact, it plays into what we've been talking about this whole show. This is why they need the poorly educated, because he is willing to come up with this idea, and some people out there, like Roseanne, let's just throw her under the bus, will say, that sounds like an ideal idea, because he's guilty and we don't like him, so let's just confiscate his money and build the wall. And Mexico paid for it. And job done. It's ridiculous.
Well, okay, this is the really... Remember how I said I was going to spoil this earlier? This is the really ridiculous part, boys and girls. El Chapo was a drug lord that was notorious for being really good at making tunnels under barricades like walls. We're talking miles and miles and miles of underground networks of the sophistication that, well, few have seen. This is a guy that when you raise a wall up in front of him, he goes, you go the high road, I go the low road, grabs the shovel, and he is gone. And that's the way that I think the most ultimate irony can play into this story. Ted Cruz now thinks that El Chapo being in jail means that all the other drug lords won't figure out that you can just dig tunnels under those walls, huh?
Yeah, well, there's that, and the goddess of irony is strong with this story. I love this story and the fact that it just shows how either one stupid Ted Cruz is or how stupid he thinks the base is. I haven't quite figured out which stupid level he falls under, but it's pretty dumb.
Yeah, but this one is the funniest thing that I've seen, though, because Ted Cruz seems to be kind of throwing things out there lately, like way out there. It's kind of like drumming up some attention. It's almost like Beto O'Rourke hurt him permanently politically. And I bring that up because this is the thing. Beto O'Rourke and Donald Trump, El Paso, Texas, they had competing rallies. And this is the funny thing. Beto O'Rourke's was about how walls and borders are bad. And let's not forget that there's some parts of Texas that are actually suing the federal government, saying that we can't afford no wall because walls make crime worse. So this is the thing. This is the crazy logic in all of this. Are Republicans crazy for keeping to push this wall? Because I mean, everything around them seems to be evidence that America doesn't want it. Are they blind?
No. And here's why. They are not blind to the fact that the base is racist. And to keep the racist base happy, they have to continually bring up the wall and say they're going to build the wall. I mean, the biggest person for this wall is Ann Coulter, and she is no lightweight when she says this is the way Trump wins with the base. And she was the one who was proposing that Trump go after the white part of the Republican Party and keep that part of the base happy. And this is the way Roger Stone and Donald Trump cooked up to do that. And you only have to see it in the glee that Trump keeps up with talking about this issue on a regular basis. And it's almost sad that we have to do it.
Well, this is the thing, too, because when we talk about things that we have to do, we don't have to build any damned wall. That's the thing. Everybody, no matter how much we try to pull them away from this debate about the wall, keeps coming back to the wall. It's insane at this point. And how, let's just be honest here. Legally speaking, Thomas, how many straws is Ted Cruz really grasping at, suggesting that we charge El Chapo for the southern border wall?
A lot. And the sad thing is, I used to give him a lot of credit because I thought he was the Bernie Sanders of the Republican Party, where he would be like, my dream debate would have been Ted Cruz versus Bernie in the presidential election, the previous one. And because he can do a really good issue. This is beneath him. This makes him look pathetic. This makes him look pandering. And I think your original analysis is right. He got so hurt by Beto O'Rourke, he has to placate now to the Trump base that he had total disdain for in the first place. And that's just sad and pathetic.
Well, this is the thing that really gets me, because it's like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but trying to go after one man's money, drug money, that he, let's just go ahead and be honest, made from taking those drugs from one country into another country. Is it weird that you're wanting to take money from the guy that basically is proof of concept the thing you need the money for doesn't work? I mean, at what point do you just look at this and say, Alanis Morissette, you're up?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Shaggy. And again, the sad thing is, this is a guy that showed himself to be the intellectual of the Republican Party, and apparently that's no more a thing that he wants to have a title to, because he's abandoned that completely. And that's a nice thing that I can actually say about Ted Cruz in the past anyway, and now we have this ridiculous idea, an ironic idea at full blast, and it's mind-numbing that he's come up with this, or some intern. And if it was some poor intern, just fire the intern and put them out of their misery.
Yeah, because I couldn't imagine the intern that was sitting around that came into work sober and came up with the idea of, you know what we should do? We should charge the drug dealers, man. I mean, to me, this sounds like something that is very akin to a stoner's pipe dream. Is there any sort of possibility that this could happen, Thomas?
Okay, let me give you an analogy. This is like the guy in Great Britain. We did a story on one of the shows that I have on FYNation.com. This is like the guy who called 911 because somebody put onions on his Big Mac. All right? You're not going to get help from the police for that. You're not going to have this happen. That's how ridiculous it is.
Oh, my God. But that's exactly what Ted Cruz is saying. Well, if Mexico won't pay for this wall, we'll help them by taking money from one of their private citizens. And this is the craziest thing about this. The absolute audacity of the Republicans now is that they say things like, hey, let's just take El Chapo's money, and they don't think that we understand that's kind of racist. Did they not get that yet?
No, I think they do. And again, it's going back to placating to the base, and that's why they're doing it. I just want to know how many shots of Russian vodka Ted Cruz had to take to say that with a straight face, because I wouldn't be able to. And he's, again, an intellectual, and that's what makes this so sad and funny at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's how we got to end the show. Sad and funny at the same time. Make sure you check us out later. Follow me on my website, shaggyjenkins.com, and Thomas, check him out at FYINation.com. Till next time, love you, mean it. Gate in, bye. We're out.